Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. And holy smokes, we got a lot to talk about on this one. Phenomenal performance once again by the Winnipeg Jets, who keep the offense absolutely cooking after it looked like they could not score much in the way of goals for quite a long time. They've now exploded for 14 goals in the last two games, and they do so this last game against a Leafs team that until very recently, or until, let's say it like this, they came rolling into the Central Division, was looking like the best team in the league. Now all of a sudden they've lost two straight games after getting roughed up by the Minnesota Wild and then absolutely blasted by the Winnipeg Jets. So many things to like about the Jets game here tonight. And one of the best guys to talk to about that, of course, is our main man, Ken Wiebe. So let's not wait any longer. Time to bring in Kenny. Here he comes. Ken Wiebe, my guy, it's great to see you. It's been a busy day for you. Why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to?
Well, it's the daily double. I love baseball. Today was the day-night doubleheader, if you will. Ernie Banks would love it. Let's Play 2 was at in IG Field in the afternoon for an exciting Winnipeg Blue Bombers victory over the Saskatchewan Roughriders, which will allow them to have a Grey Cup rematch against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Just an outstanding performance, Sean, by Winnipegger Andrew Harris, who had one touchdown but was just an absolute beast. 136 yards on the ground, a 9-yard reception, was just an absolute force. And
imagine coming off injury like that. You know what I mean? Like
7 weeks.
There's a question mark. Guy's out for 7 weeks, and he runs back into a game like that. And you could see it after one of his first runs. He did that thing. He always does where he runs, he gets taken down, and then he gets up and he runs like another 20 yards to kind of like salute the crowd. Love it when he does that.
He was so jazzed. The emotional leader of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It was a strange game, obviously 6 turnovers, but their defense just outstanding again. In 3 games against the Riders this year, I think they gave up 7 points in the second half. Just an absolutely phenomenal job by the defense in the game. And should be an exciting Grey Cup, a great rematch. We know there's a great rivalry there, and we know Mike O'Shea and Orlando Steinauer are both former teammates and really good friends. So I think it should be an absolutely fantastic performance. Got that 1,400-word story written and got on my way to the arena. Listened to most of the first period on the radio. Got here for the start of the second, and it was a really highly entertaining game. Man, Sean, you asked about it. The Jets, boy, oh boy, all of those odd man rushes in the second period. Yeah. Yes, they converted some of them, but man, honestly, that game could have been 8-1 after 2. Instead, the Jets kind of let their opponent back into the game. Yes, obviously the 5-on-3 was part of it. Paul Maurice was not as concerned as I think some folks in the building were a little bit more concerned, Sean. But the Jets really stabilized things after the Leafs made it a 2-goal game, and I really thought it was a dominant third period in a lot of ways. So, we knew we needed to see more from the Winnipeg Jets. What Blake Wheeler told us, we were going to find out what the Jets were made of, and yes, they did take advantage of 2 teams on a back-to-back, but I'll tell you what, as hard as we were, and rightfully so, on a team that scored 9 goals in 7 games, they've pumped home 14 in their last 2, and sure, it was the Leafs backup who hadn't played in a while, but the Jets did not look like they were having any trouble scoring in this game, and having said that, they could have easily got that game to double digits.
Yeah. You know what? I know I'm getting a reputation as being the fun police, so let's get that out of the way early in the show here. You touched on it. I mean, I take a look at this game, and I think there's going to be a tendency for people to think, okay, it's the Leafs. They came rolling into town. The Jets hung a game on them. Looked really good doing so. I think there's got to be a caution the last two games. Teams came in here. They played their backup goaltender, right, because they went rolling through Minnesota. And Minnesota, I know Paul Maurice had tried to say that, has said that, the back-to-back isn't what it used to be. And I think he's right. I think in the old
especially
days,
for Minnesota,
a grind, right? But Minnesota's
45-minute flight is what I'm saying. It's not a 3-hour flight like it was from Minnesota to Calgary. Sure.
I just think Minnesota, if you're looking at teams right now who take a piece of you in the front end of a back-to-back, Minnesota is one of those teams, right?
Agreed.
Like Minnesota, you played them, and it's interesting. I talked to Sheldon Keefe this morning, and I'd asked him about what that cost was, and the Leafs were up front. There was a cost to playing the Minnesota Wild last night, and they feel that cost. They said, we just can't come into this with any kind of excuses. So I'll say this, the Jets got the weaker of the two versions of the teams that the Minnesota Wild played. They got the backup goaltenders on both nights, but you've said it time and time again, Ken, and you're 100% right. You can only play the team that's in front of you, and the Jets absolutely took it to the team that was in front of them for 2 straight games, and now have suddenly won 3 or 4 games. And all of a sudden, everything is starting to look, all the storm clouds are getting a little further in the rearview mirror. We'll get into that. First, let's just get into the man of the hour, Blake Wheeler's 1,000th game. Let's talk about that, the accomplishment that he's pulled off with that. Let's kind of go overarching. Ken, I'm going to let you go to the buffet on this, but I'm going to restrict it. It's an all-Wheeler buffet. It's like a breakfast buffet. You got as many waffles as you want, but that's all you get. So let's go on Blake Wheeler, what he did tonight, and the accomplishment over his career.
Sure, Sean. And you know what? I've written a lot of words about Blake Wheeler in these 11 seasons, and I wrote a lot of words yesterday. I went through 12,400 words of transcription to get down to my feature story on Blake Wheeler that ran on sportsnet.ca to the tune of 3,241 words, recognizing the accomplishment. I spoke to a lot of his former coaches and teammates leading up to the event. And Sean, all we need to tell people, if they didn't see the video, if you can get Dustin Buffling out of the ice fishing shack to provide a message, which did include something that needed to be censored, it's an important day. I understand folks have been down on Blake Wheeler for not having as much production, but hey, guess what? He's got 5 points in his last 2 games and has started to really skate the way that we've been used to seeing him throughout the course of his career. Blake Wheeler loves this moment because the Jets won the game. If Wheeler had 2 assists and they lost 4-2, he would have been sour and surly at the podium. Instead, he could have a smile on his face, he could enjoy it, and he could laugh about PierreLuc Dubois walking in with a sleeveless picture of Blake Wheeler for his 1,000th game, with the full-on shout-out to Jansen Harkins for the original design of the shirt. Again, we've seen this in the past for people, but all the Jets wearing the 26 jerseys during the warm-up. That's a nice touch for them. Having Sam and his 3 kids there, having his parents, Jim and Pat, in the building. I'm sure that was just an absolutely fantastic moment for Blake Wheeler to enjoy. Of course, he's going to enjoy it more later on in his career, but you got the sense that he absolutely loved it because of the result. Right, Sean? That's probably the biggest thing that mattered to him. But I think it was an important game for their team, and it's interesting, right? When Blake Wheeler was saying he wasn't concerned about the offense, I think a lot of people in the media and a lot of fans were saying, well, maybe you should be concerned about 9 goals in 7 games for the team. Maybe you should be concerned about 2 for 34 on the power play. Well, the power play is 3 for 5, and the Jets have gone to the buffet with 14 goals in the last 2 games, including 10 at even strength. So, you have to give credit where credit is due. The Carolina Hurricanes will roll into town on Tuesday, and now they're going to have to do it against a team that is a little bit more rested than the teams that have gone back-to-back. But, hey, if the Jets, were a tired team going into the 6 of 7 losses, well, they got energized and they did exactly what they needed to do. And Blake Wheeler was heavily involved in getting the offense going.
Yeah, I'll just back things up and talk about like the 1,000 games, and I talked about this on Huss's show, Winnipeg Sports Talk, earlier this week. But the point has been made by Paul Maurice and a number of the players involved in this. And I know Blake Wheeler said like, this is how I'm built, and I wouldn't have played 1,000 games if I didn't play like this. But 1,000 games for Blake Wheeler is 1,000 hard games, right? Like this is a guy who played hard-nosed, in-your-face style of hockey at 110% RPMs running in the red at all times. So I mean, you got to give it credit. A lot of times we have these, and I not to denigrate anyone, but I remember Steen came in here and played his 1,000th game, right? That was the end of his career, essentially. You could tell that the finish line, the ribbon was just around the corner. He was running towards there, waving to the crowd on his way, and that's what it was like. Blake Wheeler showed tonight that he's still, and I mean, he said it after the game. This is not for him about, looking and retrospectively, he thinks the best in his career is yet to come. And so you got to hand it to him. You got to hand it to the team. You could tell clearly that team wanted to come out and have a good night for him, as I think they did the same thing for Paul Stastny when it was his time around. You got to give it to that dressing room for wanting to carry a win in that way. And Blake Wheeler, he sets up the first goal of the game to make sure that it's going to be one of these games that, hey, it's my 1,000th game. I'm still contributing. I'm still here. I'm still leading. I still feel like I'm driving the bus. Here I am. I got to say, Ken, you could tell how much he wanted it to be a good night for Blake Wheeler was Connor Hellebuck, who after Blake Wheeler tried toe dragging, you'd think he would have rooted that out of his game by 1,000 games, but he tried a toe drag in the neutral zone, which was turned over and ended up being a breakaway the other way. Connor Hellebuck with an absolutely gorgeous toe save to make it so that didn't cost the captain. But, I mean, we're taking a look at this here. This is a true to form NHL superstar who chose to make Winnipeg his home. We know why that is. He said Winnipeg is the first place where he was allowed to be completely and fully himself. And he's been, throwing everything he has into trying to lead the way for this team ever since he got here. Listen, there's a lot of people who thought 10 years ago Winnipeg would be a place that, star players left as soon as they possibly could. Blake Wheeler is a reason why that's not the case. Blake Wheeler committed to this market, and now players like Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Josh Morrissey, Connor Hellebuck, all committed to this market. And Blake Wheeler has a hand in that. So the Winnipeg Jets team that so many of you love and adore is very much shaped, not just on the ice, but culturally by Blake Wheeler. And so tonight was a celebration of that. And let's give him a hand for that.
Let's go to PLD. Come on. I can't help myself.
You can't wait.
I can't wait. No, I don't want to wait. Why would I?
It's funny. People were talking about the sleeveless shirt. We all hear about how tough of a guy PierreLuc Dubois is. He's got those arms they're not like the big round beach muscles. They're just the arms of a guy who, like, if he wasn't doing this and never spent a day in the gym, he'd still have bigger arms than most of the guys with big arms in the gym, right? Like, I remember seeing years ago, I think it was still Johnny Carson, but I remember, oh my God, Howie Long was on there. Howie Long had said how he doesn't lift weights, and his belief was you're either born butt strong or you're not. And that was his term for guys who are just, you'll never be stronger than a butt strong guy no matter how long you go to the gym for. That's PierreLuc Dubois. He's a guy who you can just tell is crazy, insane strength. And he went absolutely 24-inch pythons Hulk Hogan on Austin Matthews tonight. What did you think of that moment, Ken?
I loved it. I love the fact that PierreLuc Dubois wants to compete with the very best players in the league. I don't agree with this comment, Roscoe. Give me a break. That's not bullying. It's showing that you care. Getting involved with. This is the guy who's been begging people to get involved physically, and now you're saying he shouldn't be bullying little old Austin. Austin's not a guy of the size of Mitch Marner. Give me a break. Austin Matthews is a big, strong guy. If you get involved, Austin Matthews wasn't trying to get away from the fight. I love the fact that he took him to the ice. Give me a break, Roscoe. Come on, wake up. That's a wake up right there. Early wake up.
A long time since you dished out a wake up.
Come on.
I bet, you know what?
Jets are soft, and then you get involved with the best player on the other team, and then you shouldn't do it because you might get beat up? Come on. Let's go.
This brings up something for Kenny. Kenny pulls out the wake up. I can't remember the last time he did it. I was going to start petitioning for more wake ups from Ken because I thought he hasn't been pulling them out enough. And the chat room, I would like you to do the same thing. We need to urge this man to bring out the wake ups more often. He's been far too conservative with them. I don't know if he has to pay someone at home $5 every time he uses one. But let's get
that's like the equivalent of my swear jar right there. Every time you drop a wake up on the show, you got to drop a nickel in the old pie.
I'll say this, Ken. It's time to wake up the wake ups. Free the wake ups.
There you go. And the other thing about Dubois, Sean, here we go. We also mentioned the power play struggles. I mean, PierreLuc Dubois up to 5 power play goals on the season. He's up to 12 goals already. Although I've been his biggest backer and supporter, I think my totals for PierreLuc Dubois are not going to be close. I said he was going to have 25 goals and maybe 75 points. I mean, he's just off to a fantastic start. 12 goals already. I mean, we'll see what pace he can keep up with, but he could push 30 goals this year if he continues to play the way he does. But, Sean, we've talked about this. The engagement is the big thing for PierreLuc Dubois. You saw it against Connor McDavid in the home game against the Oilers, and now you saw it tonight. It wasn't always head-to-head, but when they were head-to-head, he loves that. And then he also was kind of very dismissive about it when I asked him about it after the game. He's like, oh, I don't go out trying to get involved with him. And instead, what we saw with our own 2 eyes, Sean, or 4 between the 2 of us, is that the conversation continued into the penalty box, and PierreLuc Dubois was laughing out loud at Austin Matthews, saying, what in the world are you going to do about it? And you know what? I love it when a player plays with that kind of edge and swagger, because the Jets haven't shown enough of that in kind of big boy games. We talked all last year about the need for statement games against teams like the Leafs, and that's exactly what you saw from the Jets today.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out here.
Yeah.
Energy 21 Richard Medeiros, our guy who's been here for a long time. Kenny and Renny logo and the Wake Up logo that you've got on your shirt, which with news to be coming down the pipe here soon enough, had invited us out to his restaurant, the restaurant he's part of, NOLA, last night. And we had an absolutely phenomenal time. Great joint, phenomenal
team
place.
Meeting.
Yeah, team meeting. It was. Thanks for having us down there. Phenomenal stuff. Go check it out, people. It is. And if you're a foodie in this city, that's a great place to go. It
wasn't a buffet, but the dishes were flowing and they were all fantastic. Really
we tried almost everything on the menu. It was good. But you're the perfect guy for that, Ken. Ken was just like, I'll have that. Every time they walked by with the dish, Ken said, I'll have that, just like it was a conversation here.
Ken Wiebe loves to eat. That's right.
Yeah. I'll say this about PierreLuc Dubois. I think he's created an element for this Jets team. And Paul Maurice was asked about the toughness of this team. And, you've got elements up and down the lineup. Paul Maurice, the line he uses, there's just enough, right? There's just enough toughness on this team for the way the league is now. It's not a heavy league. But I want to give a shout out to the style of play that I think the Winnipeg Jets played in the last 2 third periods in this game. When teams were down in the game and they needed to play their way back into the game, Paul Maurice used to say, you got to score that next one to get the game over with. That's not the only way to win those games, though. One way to win games, and Ken, you'll have played in hockey games like this before, and if you're the team trying to get back into that game, it's the most frustrating game to play. But if you're trying to get back into a game and you end up more angry or more interested in fighting the players on the other team than you are fighting your way back into that game, then the team protecting the lead is winning. And I think PierreLuc Dubois was absolutely crucial in that tonight in 2 plays. One, we've already talked about the Austin Matthews ragdolling that he had, but it was that other play, and I know that you tweeted about it. You said that it was incidental contact, and I do believe it was incidental contact. But the play where
Wall struggled to play it.
Goes out of and then PierreLuc Dubois follows him in, and the knee makes contact with his head, and Wall drops, and that's the end of the play. What should have led to a goal. Most likely incidental contact, but it's a guy going with intent and hard where the play is. And when you get there, incidental contact happens. And that's the kind of stuff that comes out of playing with that attitude that you're not afraid to go anywhere. Hey, he took that penalty earlier in the game and then finishes the penalty by going straight after Jake Muzzin and pounding him against the boards. Like, I love that attitude, and I honestly do think that attitude has made this Jets team the kind of team that can get you off your game with, because they get you more pissed off at them than at the scoreboard. And that is a phenomenal element to have to your hockey team. And I think it's an understated element to this hockey team that we haven't really talked that much about.
For sure. The thing with Dubois, why I know it was accidental, there was no movement of the leg. And let's be honest,
no,
Wall absolutely butchered the handling of that. There's no way Dubois could have expected him to he basically got himself completely spun around. And when he lost his stick, he kind of tried to play it with his blocker. It was just an absolute yard sale by Wall. So that's why I thought it was obviously accidental. I mean, did he try to get out of the way? No, but he couldn't have known that Wall was kind of going to be in that path. So, but I do agree with you. I mean, getting to the front of the net, getting involved, that's what you like to see from guys like Dubois. Let's just transition over quickly to Logan Stanley, who's generating a lot of people's fired upness in the chat room here. There again, Wayne Simmonds, one of the toughest guys in the NHL. I don't like the fact that Wayne Simmonds, late in that game, goes after Josh Morrissey with 2 cross checks. I mean, Wayne Simmonds is a tough guy, Sean. He can go after somebody in his own weight class.
Wayne Simmonds did go after people in his own weight class, and he had no takers, and ended up getting a penalty.
I don't know.
So that to me,
I
disagree with you entirely. If you go out, listen, they were angry, and they were angry for a reason. I think that there were things that happened both ways in this game.
Sure.
No one is going to be okay with their star player in Austin Matthews getting ragdolled. So they went out to make a point of it, and what happened? They got a penalty because the Jets kind of pulled the rug out from underneath them. And the one thing I'll say is Logan Stanley went and didn't want to fight him, but he went to the box when Wayne Simmonds went and sat down and jawed him through the door in the box after he wouldn't go with him, right? So Wayne Simmonds had gone out.
Wouldn't go with him.
The
ref got in the way and Simmonds punched him.
No.
The first time. Sorry, the first time? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm saying they established the first time that no one was going to go with Simmonds. So then Simmonds is in a position where he's trying to force someone to go. They're saying, if you're going to ragdoll our guy and I go to your tough guy to say, let's do this, and your tough guy turns me down, then I'm going to start going after your star players because you just went after ours. I'm just laying it out, Ken. I'm laying out what happened there, but I don't think that's...
I'm fine with what you're saying.
Not a foul in my mind by Simmonds. Simmonds was going and trying to affect the game and stand up for his guy, and he wasn't getting satisfaction. So he waited for satisfaction and forced the Jets to give him satisfaction.
Sure, but you've been in those games. What's in it for the Jets? They're up 6-3. What do they need to fight Wayne Simmonds at a play like that where they're getting a power play?
Yeah, but you can't go after Austin Matthews like that and expect nothing to come back at you, Ken. Come on.
Oh, I'm fine with that. No problem.
Yes.
But
so that's what happened. That was their retribution.
Sure.
Anyway,
okay.
That's my take on it. But I mean, I love that angle. I love that they forced that. And I will say this. This is a perfect example that, hey, it may sound like I'm saying this is a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing. Wayne Simmonds went running out to try and start a fight, and the Jets left him twisting in the wind. He went into the box, and the Jets come out and score the goal that is the absolute dagger. To me, that was the perfect example of the Leafs being more interested in getting retribution for what happened to Austin Matthews than they were competing in that game. The Jets were the stronger of the two teams mentally. And I think that's a good thing. I'm just saying, I don't look at Wayne Simmonds and think, he was an idiot for doing this. Wayne Simmonds was going out and trying to affect the game in a way that I think he had every right to. I don't see a problem with what Wayne Simmonds did. I do see a problem, though, that he headed out and tried to get into a fight and wasn't smart enough to take another guy with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally, I totally understand. And you know what? The Leafs are tired of being called a soft team. So they went out and got some guys that are tough. So
hold on a sec. Doug, this is patently wrong. Sean, I didn't see Simmonds go after anyone in his own weight class. He didn't go after Lowry or Stanley. He went around and tried to fight everyone on the ice that shift, including Stanley. And like I said, Stanley wouldn't engage with him, but then jawed him at the box once the penalty was done. So Wayne Simmonds did his due diligence in going out and trying to offer the opportunity for the Jets heavyweights to take him up on his offer, and he was turned down.
But I would also say, in that situation, Logan Stanley is under no obligation to take the fight. It's not. They're up by, they're up in the game. I mean,
I agree.
I think that's progress for Logan Stanley. You need to be able to pick your spots. So, what about the reaction? Logan got pretty fired up on the way off the ice at the end.
Yeah,
I liked the emotion, the old "let's go."
They like I said, they absolutely. Sorry, Ken, I just got to get rid of something in the chat room here. They absolutely won the mental battle here tonight. They got the Leafs, and someone was talking about Sheldon Keefe's reaction on the bench. They got the Leafs fired up. They went after their goalie. They went after their star player. They wouldn't engage their fighter. Kyle Clifford went out and tried to do the same thing. Both of them in one shift, they were going around looking for dance partners. They wouldn't dance with them. Like, the Jets handled that perfectly, because you're right, Ken, there is no reason for Logan Stanley to engage at that point with Wayne Simmonds, because if Wayne Simmonds lays one on him, then all of a sudden all the momentum is
you gave them life.
Yes, exactly. So no, I hope no one is getting this unclear.
I'm with you.
I entirely think that the Jets handled it perfectly. The Jets won the mind battle in that third period, and to me, it was maybe the most impressive thing about the game. And I think they did the same thing in the last game. That Dougie Hamilton two-hand slash is an example of Dougie Hamilton wanting retribution against the Jets players more than he wants to get back into it and win that game. And he takes a penalty at an entirely crucial time. And there you go. That is 2 games for me that the Jets have taken the other team out of the game mentally, and good on them for doing that. Phenomenal. It's an element that I love, and I do think that PierreLuc Dubois with Neil Pionk coming up quick behind him are the guys who are driving that mindset and driving the opposition crazy.
I know the 10 games against one another was too much last year, Sean, but this is another example. The NHL needs more Jets-Leafs. I'm not saying they need to be in the same division, but there needs to be some there's got to be, in baseball, the interleague play element. I want to see like a whatever variety pack against certain teams where they come more than once a year. Yeah. These teams are fun. We said this when it was Austin Matthews versus Patrick Laine. I want to see these teams more often. I think that would be great for the league. And let's go from there. Sorry, I put that up. Let's talk about the Pionk play. Paul Maurice thought it was just a matter of Pionk trying to lay a hit, Sandin trying to get out of the way. I don't think it was blatant, but I personally thought he stuck his leg out a little bit, but it was more of the awkward nature of the hit. I don't know that it's a suspendable play, but that is for surely a tripping penalty that was missed. But what was also missed is the charging penalty. Jason Spezza took a dirty... Jason Spezza is an honest player. That's a dirty play. His play, Pionk is in a vulnerable position, falling to the ice, and when he tries to go at his head, he follows through and catches him with the knee. I didn't like either one of those plays, to be perfectly honest.
No, but you could see, this is Jason Spezza, of all people. But again, back to the point that we've been talking about here, how mad did the Jets have the Toronto Maple Leafs that Jason Spezza, the elder statesman of that team, who's 38 years old now, Ken? 38, I believe he is taking a hit. And so this is one of those things that I think it's kind of like PierreLuc Dubois. PierreLuc Dubois skates in, and Woll goes for the puck, and his knee makes contact with his head. I don't think that PierreLuc Dubois was trying to do that, but I don't think he was trying not to do that. Someone on the show, and I can't remember what game it was, but we spent a lot of time talking in one of the shows about the player not, and maybe it was Puljujärvi or someone like that, not trying to avoid Connor Hellebuck on a specific play. I think it resulted in a goal. So this is definitely an apples to oranges comparison. But someone was on me saying that the player did not try to avoid the goaltender. Well, PierreLuc Dubois did not try to avoid Woll in that play. I watched his leg, and he doesn't stick his leg out. He keeps his leg in that same track. But I do think at the same time he realized that the track was going through Woll's head and didn't try and jump out of the way and avoid contact. And I don't think it's his job to do that. I have no problem with what happened there. I see a little bit of that with Spezza, where Spezza went and tried to close on Pionk for the hit. And the timing of the hit is okay, but Pionk falls and he's in a vulnerable position. And
can't finish that hit.
And that's what I'm saying. Spezza doesn't hold back. He's in a vulnerable position, and he does. I think it's a similar thing. Woll was vulnerable. PierreLuc Dubois just keeps going through his track. Pionk was vulnerable. Spezza keeps going through his track. I'd say as far as a foul goes, PierreLuc Dubois was about a 5 out of 10. I'd say as far as Spezza's was, foul is about an 8 out of 10. Spezza's is worse, but I see it along the same lines of guys going and following the play that they've committed to and saying, you know what, too bad for this guy. I'm not trying to avoid the play.
Yeah, the only reason Spezza finishes the hit at all is because the play on Sandin happened earlier in the shift. For me, that's
pissed off at Pionk.
That's retribution. What Dubois was doing is not retribution. He sees the goaltender absolutely fumbling a puck that he should never have even played in the first place. That's how that play happened. So they're
going after Pionk. They're trying to get a lick in.
They're
on
pissed
Pionk
for sure at the hit.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was certainly interesting. One thing we should touch on. I mean, we've been pounding the Jets for not playing the fourth line enough, and this is something that, Sean, we've talked about a lot off camera. Evgeni Svechnikov, since day one of the pro camp, has been showcasing an awesome release and a rocket of a shot. But one thing that has been absolutely baffling to me is that he hasn't been able to get it off very often in game situations until tonight. That's an absolute rocket that he blows by Joseph Woll. A great play to get it over to him by Toninato on the 2-on-1. That is an absolute sniper's goal scorer's goal. And Sean, we see it almost every single day in practice, and it doesn't matter if he was on the second line or the fourth line. Of course, you get more opportunities when you're playing with Kyle Connor and PierreLuc Dubois, but that's a goal that Evgeni Svechnikov needed. I understand folks are saying, well, if you're on the fourth line, what do you expect? Well, guess what? You want to work your way up the depth chart? You need to make plays like that. We talked about the same thing with Christian Vesalainen. He had another excellent play today where he got a shot in the slot and absolutely rifled it off the shoulder of Woll. When those two guys are going and shooting, the Jets can be a dangerous team, Sean, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's not just their high-end skilled players putting up beautiful goals like Mark Scheifele taking a pass from Kyle Connor, splitting the defense and ripping it home. Like Andrew Kopp on a 1-on-2, basically sneaking in, out-muscling somebody, and then going 5-hole. I mean, the Jets' offense was clicking again, and it's not just one line. This was another one of those nights where I thought all four lines were really going again. There were some dangerous chances, and they took it to them. I mean, the give and go with Ehlers and Kopp, again, that's dynamic skating and smart passing. And that was during that stretch in the second where it seemed like there was an odd man rush about every other shift. And it was a situation where, Sean, we talk about this all the time. When a team is playing a back-to-back, what goes first? The brain. The brain's not working. And you open up your game, and all of a sudden you do something where you don't have your third man high, or you have a bad pinch, and you look over your shoulder and you're like, holy smokes. The other team's got another 2-on-1. Oh, there's Kyle Connor in a shorthanded breakaway. Like, what are we doing here? So, I mean, but the Jets were pushing the pace, and that's what they had to do, right? That's the thing. When you have a team playing in a back-to-back, you need to dictate the pace of play, and that's a hard thing to do against the Leafs. I don't care if Mitch Marner's out of the lineup. The Leafs have plenty of offensive weapons. They were down 3-0 the night before against the Minnesota Wild. They found a way to get the game to extra time. One thing that surprised me, where was the nuclear option today? Why are you rolling with Nick Ritchie with Austin Matthews? Why are you not rolling Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares in a game where you're chasing the game? That's the one thing that I didn't understand.
I got
a lot of time with Sheldon Keefe. I think he's a smart coach, really smart. I would have gone to that option in the third period when the team was down 2 goals.
I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with this thing about, like, I think that, and I've been on record as saying that in the past, I think that harms the Edmonton Oilers.
It makes them easier to check, but if you're trying to score...
Listen, if it's a game that means everything, I'm okay with that. But I don't think you can be turning every single game that you're trailing into let's go to the nuclear option, because I think while it shows an extreme amount of faith in a certain amount of players, it shows a lack of faith in a lot of the rest of your lineup. People are talking about it in here. I think Joe from Winnipeg had said this about Svech doesn't hurt you. Pomo needs that more faith in that fourth line. It's like you're reading my mind here, Joe, even though I know you said this probably about 3 minutes ago. But I like the idea of a coach saying, listen, we're a team. We're going to get through this together, especially like this loss is, let's be honest, it's a meaningless loss for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's easy for them to walk in and say, look, we spent what we had last night. We put in our backup goaltender. They clearly hung him out to dry. Listen, people, that what you saw here tonight is not the Toronto Maple Leafs that teams have been seeing for the last 2 to 3 weeks or through the month of November, where they were the best team in the NHL. This is not that team. They weren't on tonight. So I'm okay with them going along the lines. I'm okay with them going along and just saying we're going to get it done, and we're going to try and have Wayne Simmons put an effect on this game, and Andre Kasha, who got a goal in that game, and so on and so forth. I'm okay with that. I dislike the idea of like entirely shortening your bench at all times. Before we move on, though, I just got to get to this. I'm just going to do this quick here, Ken. Troy Stevens has proven time and time again he's the biggest fan of Sean's headband. He's asking for it. That's exactly what he's going to get. Time to make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny postgame show. Kenny, I cut you off.
The answer is yes.
Finish the point.
Just my point in that situation. I just didn't really think the Leafs were very dangerous at 5-on-5 tonight. So I think this is one of the few times where I would have liked to see the nuclear option employed, because I didn't think their other lines were really getting a whole lot accomplished. That's why I thought he should have maybe thought about it. And it worked the night before when they were down 3-0. So I know you don't want to go to the well every single night, but I mean, you dealt with the rally the night before. So anyways, I don't think it would have mattered. And I mean, for me, the biggest thing for the Jets, this was one of the rare nights when both Mark Scheifele and PierreLuc Dubois were both flying at the same time. And that's when the Jets are a dangerous team, when their top six is really rolling and in some ways are pushing one another to be better.
But I think one of the reasons the Jets were so good tonight is because we did get a healthy dose of that third line. I mean, how many times did you notice Christian Vesalainen tonight? Mm-hmm. How many times did you notice Jensen Harkins tonight? And we already talked about Svechnikov and what he did. I mean, when you give everybody a piece of the game, everyone's more involved, and that's when you start getting the depth scoring rolling in this thing. And that's the one thing that I think has been the best response that the Jets have had is, it's been great. You know, Mark Scheifele shows up, scores a similar goal to a couple of the ones that he had last night. I love this element, and I brought this up last game. And I know from the answer, I know that Paul Maurice maybe doesn't think this is sustainable or it's something that's not going to happen in the playoffs. But I love the version of Mark Scheifele that just takes the puck with the attitude that he's just going to go until you stop him. And if you don't stop him, he's going to get past you and he's going to score. And that's what he did tonight. It's another one of those plays where he gets the puck with speed, cuts through three players, gets in, and scores a goal. I love that element of his game and that he's playing that. Blake Wheeler is back to being like the puck distributor guy that he loves to be, but he's also involved enough that he's getting breakaways. So you're getting that out of him. Kyle Connor is just quietly going along, doing what Kyle Connor always quietly goes along and does. That one-timer of his, Ken, and boy, we got to talk about that in the power play, because I now see what they were trying to get to with him. But that one-timer, holy smokes, that's like grade A one-timer. You'll see a handful of those scored in a year, and we're barely talking about it. You know what I mean? Because of all that's going on in this game. And then we get to the second line, which I think has actually been the biggest find in the last couple of games. Like PierreLuc Dubois, you talked about him, what he's doing, but the element between, you know, Andrew Kopp and Nick Ehlers tonight, how good was that? How good was that little play? Like, we knew and have known for a long time that Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, and then you add in a guy like Kyle Connor and Laine could do it when they were here. We knew those players are of extreme skill and can pull off these, you know, give and go touch pass plays for one-timers and blow past people. Did we think that they were going to get to a situation where we would have guys like Andrew Kopp and Nick Ehlers pulling that off together successfully, consistently? Like, I mean, that line has looked phenomenal. The Lowry line is starting to look, like I said, I've been noticing Christian Vesalainen is playing the best hockey of his NHL career. Maybe he's played better hockey at the AHL level or over in Finland, but he's doing his best work at the NHL level that he's ever done before. Lowry is quietly going out doing his thing. Stastny, the same thing. I think he's been really a quiet element in all this the last couple of games, where it's like whenever he's been out on the ice, he's just always making the right play. And then finally,
he's the glue. He's the glue.
He's the glue. And then finally, the fourth line gets a piece of it. And then all of a sudden, you've got the defense. We're chipping in on the score sheet here tonight. And now, Ken, it's the opposite. On a couple nights where something we haven't talked about much, where Connor Hellebuyck didn't have his best night, it's kind of the reverse. Remember, we were talking a number of games ago about the wasted effort of Connor Hellebuyck, who had tried to single-handedly win games, and he just wasn't getting the offensive help. Well, now Connor Hellebuyck has been able to take a couple games off, and the Winnipeg Jets offense has gone out and won these games for them. You have to admire the way that the Jets took that 3-day break. The coaches took that time to get their team on the same page, and there is no doubting that this team came out of that break on the same page.
Oh, no doubt. And I mean, Kyle Connor I don't think he let it slip, but the way that Kyle Connor was so open and honest about the deep dive that the Jets did regarding the offense that they needed to generate. I mean, Paul Maurice knows they're a dangerous team on the rush, but that you can't count on rush chances being the driver of their team. But the ability to get to the net a little better, we've seen that. We've seen better finish. We've seen confidence. We've seen players handle the puck the way that we know that they can handle the puck. We've seen shooters like Nikolai Ehlers get to the spots where he can be incredibly dangerous. And, hey, Nikolai Ehlers, nobody was more upset than Nikolai Ehlers about the turnover that led to the only goal in Monday's game. That's the kind of response you need to see from star players. 2 goals the last game, another nice goal today. But the effort that you're seeing, the speed generation, the shots, all of that stuff. I mean, hey, we know that Blake Wheeler's been disappointed about not scoring yet, but when you win a couple games, you win 3 out of 4, you pitch in 5 assists, now Blake Wheeler's standing at the podium making jokes about not scoring and confidently again saying, you guys have seen me long enough, I'm going to score soon. And he believes it. He's not just trying to convince himself. He knows that he's going to get things going because of the opportunities he's been able to generate. And the biggest thing too, Sean, it's all relative, but Scheifele being as dangerous as Scheifele has been the last 2 games is important.
Yeah,
that is a good one.
Entirely important. That's a really good one. You know what? I wanted to get into this because it was a hot topic of conversation. Goes a little bit quiet here. We know that as soon as the Jets get into a little bit of a skid, that the Fire Maurice chants are going to come out. And we got into the whole thing about, people are expecting us to come out and say, let's fire this guy. We've explained we're journalists. That's not the way it works. But I'll say this. This is the reason why. So everyone is wondering why, about the situation. I think maybe we should explain it like this, Ken. People will come to me and ask me why I don't think that Paul Maurice is on the verge of getting fired. This is why. This is exactly why. So you're seeing these situations, and the Jets went into a little bit of a skid, and yet that'll happen, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, and I'm not saying that, you know, I said on this show that I thought Paul Maurice owned a large part, if not the largest part, of that last Jets, you know, losing skid, because he started messing with what was working. But that said, Paul Maurice comes out and says to us, Ken, before this turns around, we are just a tweak away from our offense being maybe the best it's ever been. And how does his team react when he gets 3 days to take his team and coach his systems and move them in a direction? They come out and they get 14 goals in 2 games. Now, just imagine this, people. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and you are wanting to fire Paul Maurice, if Paul Maurice comes out and says to you, we are just that far away from everything entirely shifting, and then the next 2 games it goes out and it entirely shifts, you're left thinking, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy has a read on his team. He knows what's wrong. He can get them there. And never mind the fact that if you take a look at that big losing streak they had at the end of the season last year, well, how did they respond? They respond by going into the playoffs and knocking off the Edmonton Oilers after getting owned by the Oilers and sweeping them 4 straight. That's the response to the losing streak. Well, now we're seeing again a really strong response to a losing streak here. So everyone who's out there saying there's a losing streak, you need to fire Paul Maurice. I'm not like, listen, you can have your opinion and maybe you're right. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. What I am saying is there's a general manager up there who's seen enough times that a lot of times this team comes out of these losing streaks hotter than they've ever been before, and that's what you're dealing with. You want to know why Paul Maurice doesn't get fired? It's because the owner of this team and the general manager of this team have faith that he's going to turn it around. They're going to give him time to turn it around. And in the times where he's been given that faith and time, Paul Maurice has got a lot out of his teams right after those losing streaks.
Yeah, and you know who else has faith in Paul Maurice? The players. Because if the players, the thing that was making me laugh to a certain degree during that stretch is the people were saying that the Jets had quit on Paul Maurice or that they weren't listening. Well, guess what? After Paul Maurice gave his team the day or 2 days off, Paul Maurice didn't take 2 days off, Sean. We saw him at the podium on Wednesday, and the bags under his eyes were pretty apparent that he didn't spend a lot of time sleeping in those days after the 46-shot effort against the Arizona Coyotes. He went to work on the video. He went to work on tightening things up with the power play. And you know what? His players listened with open ears and eyes and then reinforced those beliefs by playing hard. So I don't want to hear for 1 second the Jets were quitting on Maurice. I mean, you don't have to like all the deployment or whatever else, but the Jets have not quit on their coach, and this was a prime example of that. So to me, credit where credit is due. The players, once again, like I said beforehand, the players need to execute, but the players had a good plan in place, and they executed that plan in those 2 games. And now they have to follow that up. Same thing. They're going to face a team. I mean, Carolina won yesterday, but they had lost 5 of 6. But before that, Carolina is one of the faster teams in the NHL. They're very deep. Their goaltending has been very good, at least out of the gate. Freddie Anderson was fantastic. So this is a team that is going to come in here and offer another stiff challenge. So the Jets need to keep it going. I mean, it's one thing to, kind of inch your way back above the playoff line, but I mean, the Jets aren't out of the woodwork here, even though they've had 2 important wins and 3 of their last 4. The West is incredibly tight, and now they need to follow that up with more strong efforts. They're not going to win every game, but this week they still will play the Carolina Hurricanes, the Seattle Kraken, and the Vancouver Canucks, who will have a new head coach in Bruce Boudreau. Tough situation, obviously, for Travis Green and Nolan Baumgartner. We know those are great people and very good coaches, and I would imagine they're going to be getting an opportunity again at some point down the road. Who knows when it will come, but I think that's a tough situation for those guys to become the fall guys, but that's the way it goes sometimes with coaching, and we'll see what kind of response the Canucks will have to the coaching change. I mean, it's always interesting. It often goes.
Chicago's done well. Right? You see sometimes
better, for sure.
That's the wake up they need, right?
There
for
you
sure.
go.
I want to make this final point because I understand the argument that a lot of the Fire Pomo crowd is making. In the end, I know a lot of that crowd feels that Pomo gets a lot out of this team, enough to keep them competitive. Their complaint is that they should be better, right? Like that the Jets should be winning cups, right? And they could, all the people who feel that way, you may be entirely right, but guess who feels that way too? Every single fan base with a good team that is trying to win a cup that doesn't quite win a cup, right? Like that's the wheelhouse that you're in. The Jets are a talented enough team to be considered a Stanley Cup winner, as are a number of teams out there. I won't go and list them, but listen, right now, if the Avalanche don't win the cup this year, there's going to be Avalanche fans out there who don't think Jared Bednar is the guy to get the job done. The team thinks so because they just doubled down and extended him, right, Ken? But there's an argument to be had that the Colorado Avalanche should have won a cup maybe last year, possibly the year before, and quite, definitely this year, the way that people felt about them. Team like the Florida Panthers, and for years before that, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who people thought needed to be better than they were and should have been winning championships, they stuck with their coach and they got there. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, like, Jets fans who think that Paul Maurice isn't the guy may be entirely right, because you know what? They've never won the cup. So maybe he's not. But the fact of the matter is, it's easy to say, move along and get someone else, and maybe they'll be the right guy. But, a team like Tampa Bay showed that patience paid off. And other teams, like the Pittsburgh Penguins before that, showed that patience was not something they needed. They needed to take action and bring in Mike Sullivan, who turned that team into one of the great turnaround stories. I think the second greatest turnaround story of all time, Ken, behind the Blues a couple years back, where Craig Berube turned that team around, right? So there's examples of both. That's what Kevin Cheveldayoff needs to struggle with. Is Paul Maurice the guy? I understand why people are saying that. I guess I'm just saying every team with a great hockey team, every fan base with a great hockey team feels exactly the way you are feeling.
Yeah, and the thing, just quickly on Bednar, I know you've spent some time with them during the Hockey Night broadcasts. I know the Avalanche had a great regular season, but they didn't have a Stanley Cup winning goaltender, and their secondary scoring completely dried up. That's not coaching to me. I understand some folks may disagree, but I don't think that has anything to do with the coach. Nathan MacKinnon got shut down by the Vegas Golden Knights in the last 3 games of the series. Yeah. Star players it happens. So, but I totally understand when expectations are high, sometimes changes are made. So you got to reassess and look at things all over the place. But it's definitely going to be interesting times. But like I said, I think that the one thing, that was something that really stood out to me. Watching Paul Maurice at the podium on the Wednesday, he was very calm. His mood was high, as you mentioned. Not everyone thought that they were that close, but the things in the offensive game for the Jets, the zone entries, the exits, the retrieval, some of those things. And here's the thing. They knew they needed to go to the net more. That's exactly what they did in these 2 games. Now, here's the other thing. Sometimes when the Jets struggle, they struggle with speed. The Carolina Hurricanes are a very fast team. They can get on you. They can force you into turnovers, neutral zone turnovers. That's when we've seen the Jets get into trouble. So that's going to be a big test for them to try to continue this on as they move forward.
Ken, I'll take that a step further. I think that the Jets always have, and as they're constructed, always will struggle with speed, because I do think that the Winnipeg Jets are a rhythm team. And when you take them out of their rhythm, that's when they struggle. And when they're in their rhythm, that's when they are phenomenal. It's one of the ththings that I think drives people crazy about the Jets is you take a look at the Jets on a night like tonight or a night like Friday, they look like one of the most skilled teams in the league. And but when they've got that rhythm and they've got that flow, that's what they look like. But when that flow is interrupted, and I think this is where Paul Maurice is trying to get to, when that flow is interrupted, that's what you have to do, is you have to just crash the net and get ugly goals, right? And I think that's the element that Paul Maurice is trying to add to the team this year. Never mind trying to, and what I think, he said it. That's what they're trying to do. The Jets are trying to become a team that when that rhythm that they had on the last couple of nights that looks great when it's working, but terrible when it doesn't, they want to have other ways that they can win, and I don't think they've had that in years past, and I think there's a recognition of that. Last thing we got to talk about, finish off.
Just a quick one here, Justin. I think this is a cap issue for the Jets. I don't see Pionk being suspended, but it's not just as simple as saying a skilled defenseman is out of the lineup, you'd call up Heinola. The Jets don't have the cap room to do it unless they waive someone or send somebody else down, and again, it wouldn't be a multiple game suspension. if there is any kind of supplemental discipline for PierreLuc. So Hainel has been playing well at certain times, but I don't see a call-up being right around the corner.
Let's get to the power play. And let me start on this because I had been the one who questioned what they did in the last game. And I mean, I think I was right in the last game. Last game was an important game, and I think they made changes to the power play that I thought were high risk in the idea that you needed the power play to produce. It did, but not really. Like, the power play didn't really produce, right? Like, Mark Scheifele comes down, one man comes in and shoots the puck. It wasn't a structural victory on the power play last game. Tonight it was a structural blowout. They did absolutely phenomenally. I didn't like the move of putting Kyle Connor on the other side because I thought it eliminated his possibilities for a one-timer until I saw how often they tried to create the one-timer that he had tonight. It's not about getting a pass from up top. It's about getting a pass from down low. PierreLuc Dubois going in behind the net and then creating an option for trying to force open Mark Scheifele in the middle and draw that defenseman down to give Mark Scheifele space. And if you don't, then it's a quick move to PierreLuc Dubois, who has all the time in the world to bring it around the net. And then once everyone gets locked into that, the pass comes out to Kyle Connor. And then you see the one-timer that we had there tonight. How much of the power play victories tonight, Ken, do you give to the structure, and how much do you give to Toronto Maple Leafs team who may have been a little tired, a little over-aggressive, which is what I saw in that first goal? That's a structural breakdown. But how much do you give to the Jets system being victorious versus how the Leafs played it tonight?
Well, I mean, it's certainly shared responsibility there for sure. The other thing is confidence, Sean. I mean, this is factual. I mean, when the Jets were static and struggling, they weren't feeling confident. Now you've pumped in 14 goals, 4 on the power play in 2 games. Now suddenly you're finding a way to see that shot lane, to get that puck over, to move the puck a little bit more crisply, to find a one-timer available, to find that extra lane, make that extra play. I think it was an important night for the Jets. Of course, I mean, there were some structural breakdowns, but they forced those structural breakdowns because of their ability to move the puck. If the other team's aggressive, you got to move it quicker. And that's what the Jets were able to do. So impressive job on those fronts. And here's the other thing. The Jets were struggling mightily on zone entries with their power play when they were struggling. What did the Jets do? Attacked with speed. Kyle Connor, perfect seam to Mark Scheifele, blows by the D. And there again, the play that Scheifele makes on the goal, it's just the most subtle of delays before he shoots. Wall is expecting him to shoot right away. Scheifele kind of changes the angle and then rips it back against him, against the grain, and scores. I mean, Mark Scheifele's goals in those 4 goals are absolute beauties. And for a guy who was struggling with his offensive confidence, they're so important for him to get going. And I mean, you know, it wasn't long ago we were wondering if Scheifele was playing himself out of the Olympic discussion. Now he's almost back to being a point-a-game player. Not quite, but inching towards that mark after really struggling through the first 16 games, essentially.
You know what's interesting, though, Ken, is, and I want to move to a point that I'm going to bring this up here because I think this is fascinating. It's got my mind kind of churning. But all of the players that Mark Scheifele, I think that we would look at and say he's duking it out for those, you know, like maybe bottom 6 role on that team, they're all performing. Right? Like all of these guys, Steve Stamkos is out there absolutely tearing it up, right? John Tavares. I think these are 2 guys that we thought Mark Scheifele was well ahead of and that they were maybe aging themselves out of the conversation. And now Jonathan Tavares is one of the highest scoring Canadians in the league, if you know, outside of Connor McDavid, right? So I find that interesting. I'm going to get away from that point. I think this is really fascinating. Tracy Okranek says they need to pull out of the Oilers shutdown game from last playoffs. The reason I find this fascinating, Ken, is because I did actually feel what she was saying about they discovered this defensive game, and I think they tried to go along with that to a degree against the Montreal Canadiens. Did not work, but earlier this year, it wasn't this explosive Jets offense that we had. It was, you know, and they were talking about being able to play. We were having conversations about how is Hellebuyck going to handle this new Jets team that didn't allow as many shots. Was it going to affect his rhythm? I wonder about these last couple of wins, and if maybe there's an idea in it with the Jets coaches that they may have swung the pendulum too far to playing defensive hockey, and now they need to get back to kind of freeing everything up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't think the Jets are expecting
great
to be.
Question, by the way.
It is a great question.
Great question.
I would say the difference, though, is that with the improved defensive personnel, I don't think they need to play as much of a shutdown game in terms of sitting back maybe a little bit against Edmonton that maybe they did in the playoffs last year, because they can play a little bit more aggressively in all three zones because of who they have on the back end. At the same time, they need to be diligent defensively. Again, today, they gave up 2 power play goals, 1 at even strength. The other night, they allowed 1 in the power play again, but overall, I wouldn't say there were structural breakdowns against New Jersey, even though there were a couple of blatant kind of turnovers that ended up in the back of the net. But I think that the Jets have to find the balance. I don't think they pushed the pendulum too far, Sean. I don't think they're going to average 7 goals for the rest of the week either. But I think there are things they can tighten up in terms of their puck management. But I think that they can play a high-octane style while still respecting the defensive process. And I think they did that pretty well tonight. I don't think they gave up a lot 5-on-5. And part of that might have been facing a team back-to-back. But I think structurally, in all 3 games this week, I think the Jets were pretty sound defensively in a lot of areas.
But that's I think kind of what I'm saying, though, Ken, is the idea that
you're saying they need to free it up a little bit more. And as you mentioned to Paul Maurice, I agree. I think the defense were getting back to being more aggressive and pinching a little bit more and kind of pushing the play, whereas they'd kind of got a little bit tentative in some of those other games where they were struggling to score. Is that more of what you meant?
Well, I guess just the way that this team is built, it's not the Montreal Canadiens of last year, right? It is a team that loves to score. And so the model that I think I guess I'm questioning, did the Jets fall into a Montreal Canadiens model and say, this is what we need to do? Do you remember that game against the Islanders? And they lose a tight one to the Islanders, and they're like, this is a playoff game, and this is what you need to do. Yep. And clearly that's what the Islanders do or have done to succeed. It's not happening for them this year. But there's also an example of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have that ability, that really, really solid ability to grind things right down if they need to, but open it up every once in a while when they need to, and really tear it up when they open it up.
Sure.
My question, I guess, is this. If you're trying to be too defensive all the time, are you losing players like Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Nikolai Ehlers, maybe some of the guys who've struggled more so this year? Maybe are you risking losing those guys because those guys just love to score? Like, do you have to create a game plan that includes a healthy dose of them going to the offensive buffet every once in a while, in between playing defensive hockey, and allowing them to play both games rather than just playing one? And I'm not saying that he was doing that, but I just wonder if maybe some of the problems that we saw from those highly offensive players earlier this year was that they weren't getting to do what they did, which is these last couple of games, score in abundance, because that's what they love to do.
I mean, it's an interesting theory. I'm not sure that the Jets are there, Sean, to be honest. I think that they can do both. I don't think that they got, you can still be strong defensively, structurally, without sacrificing the offense. Again, you're not going to have a stretch of games where you're having, 10 or 12 odd man rushes every single game and you're burying off the rush all the time. But Paul Maurice also knows the skill set of his players. He's not going to ask them to play a 1-4 game and try to be effective. They're not going to be effective in a 1-4 style where they're bottling up the neutral zone and not getting aggressive on the forecheck, because they have players with speed and skill and they want to create chaos on the forecheck. So I don't know. I don't think it was as much of a sitting back as much as they just didn't have. They weren't able to find as much in the tank, and that prevented their offense from getting going during that stretch of time. But, I mean, this next block of games, as they head toward the midway point, that's going to tell us a lot more about where the Jets are at in terms of finding that balance between playing a very sound defensive game and still being able to score enough and using their skill, that what you talked about. I don't think the Jets are going to try to get involved in a bunch of 7-6 games. I know that's not what you're saying.
Yep.
But I do think that there is an element where they can be more aggressive and try to dictate the pace and use their speed and put their skill to the advantage and to the forefront a little bit more often.
Just going to answer this quickly. Craig Zamzow, no matter what happens, whether the NHL goes or not, that hole is going to remain in the schedule. So if the NHL players don't go to the Olympics, there's not going to be any NHL hockey on at that time.
Well, but they're going to try to fill in some of the missed games, though, during that stretch, I think.
Yeah, COVID-addressed games, right?
Yeah.
And at the risk of sounding like an idiot, because it's easy to go and say, like, that's the best, just do it like that. I do think that the Jets need to follow like a Tampa Bay model, and I think Maurice really needs to have his pulse or his fingers on the pulse of the team, in that he can kind of get them to flip the switch to say, guys, tonight's going to be a defensive grinder, and then be able to kind of, in those nights where he can feel like it's a night where they can run, then let them run. Do you know what I mean? Because I do think offensively, a lot of the players on this team need to be fed. It's just the kind of team they have. A guy like PierreLuc Dubois doesn't need that. PierreLuc Dubois is going to be happy in an 8-0 victory or a 1-0 victory because he loves to grind. And when he scores, he doesn't care how it happens. I do think players like Scheifele, players like Wheeler, they love to pass, they love to move, they love to, make those cross ice one-timers. They like to score pretty goals. I think you need to feed those instincts of those players, but I also think you need to have them be able to buy in and know what time it is. And I think the point was made again by Tracy O'Kranick. I do think that the Jets, from what we've seen from them, is a team that went into, okay, we've gone into a defensive shell. That's what we need to do to get past Edmonton. And they stayed in that for a while. I think they need to be that hybrid team that we see from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who can beat you 7-0 and can consistently beat you 1-0. Easier said than done, but I do think that that would be the strengths of this team, something this team is capable of, and one hell of a team for them to emulate. Ken, you got the last thought before we close this out?
No, just a fun weekend all around. We had a great Kenny and Renny team meeting yesterday, and a fun week of sports today. It was fun to be part of that doubleheader, and fun day for Winnipeg sports fans, I'm sure. They got a lot of excitement, a lot of action, and the beauty is...
Good point. Yeah, sorry, you don't need to...
No, it's fine. It's okay. It's all good.
The bullet makes a good point here. Yeah. Anyways.
It's another fun game coming up, and every day is a interesting day around these parts, it seems.
See, this is what I worried about, because you do sound like an idiot where you're like, hey, they won 2 straight cups. Everyone should be like them. Like, clearly, the Montreal Canadiens aren't following this model. The New York Islanders aren't following this model. They've had success without that. I only think there's a certain amount of teams who would be capable of following this model.
Because of their skill, I mean.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. I think the Winnipeg Jets are in a position where they could follow that model. Okay, let's shut this down here. Great job with the chat room.
Last thing. We should all, last broadcast for Bob Knuckles Irving today on CJOB with the game. I did have the headphones on today at IG Field, and it was another great call for Bob. We both know him well enough. Anyone who's worked in this industry knows he's an unbelievable human being, and we want to wish Bob all the best in his retirement as well.
Yeah.
Phenomenal
broadcaster. We're so lucky to have so many good broadcasters here in Winnipeg, and he's just one of the icons. I'm going to close this as quick as I can, because my 11 and 10-year-olds were bugging me earlier today about how it takes me 10 minutes to close down the show. So I just want to say this quick. Great job by the chat room. Great job by Kenny tonight. I love it when people leave those comments that kind of get your brain fired up in the middle of the show. That happened like 3 or 4 times tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. We really enjoyed this. We will see you on Tuesday after a great game coming up against and another big test against the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll see everyone on Tuesday.